right. Okay, so final piece of content for the day. So we know there's, as Jonathan mentioned, there's a party incoming and we're in the way. So like Thai food, we will try to keep it a little bit spicy so you're staying awake here. All right, so we had Vitalik on stage here earlier today. And luckily for you guys, he said he thinks L2s are like the way the Ethereum network is going to scale, which you might already be aware of. But that was his take. And we're very, very lucky to have two of the top founders of sort of Ethereum scaling solutions. We have Ed from Offchain Labs and Arbitrum, and we have Alex from Matter Labs behind CK Sync. So we're going to start with two things that I think the crypto world has a little bit of a, let's call it, awkward relationship with. So governments and banks. So Ed, you have a very interesting background when it comes to governments. And so I'd love to hear just like a tiny bit about your background. Yeah. And then I'm curious about what you think sort of the crypto crowd or crypto industry doesn't understand or misunderstands about governments and how they work.
Sure. Yeah, so just by way of background, I worked on the White House staff for a couple of years during the last 2 years of the Obama administration as the deputy CTO of the United States, basically as a senior policy advisor to the president on all things tech. So a few things I think that, that folks in our space often don't understand about government. One of them is a government is not a single unit. It consists of a lot of different parts, a lot of different offices or agencies or ministries, sub-offices. Each one has its own culture, each one has its own mission, and pursues that mission. And when government acts as a body, it happens through a sort of negotiation or consensus among those parties. And so you have a lot of different interests involved at the decision-making table in government. I think that's one thing. Another thing to note is that just like in a lot of other spaces in government, most of the interesting things happen behind closed doors. You may see a sort of scripted and public release of information or a program or some initiative, and there's often been a ton of conversation behind the scenes. For example, when I worked at the White House, there was a lot of conversation about crypto and crypto policy. It didn't surface yet at that time as policy. And in fact, later what we have seen surface was somewhat different from the conversation that was going on when I was there. I guess I'd point to those things.
That's very insightful. Thank you. All right, Alex, you guys just did some work with Deutsche Bank, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm curious, what's that been like, and sort of what are the things that you've had to sort of deal with when interacting with the bank versus sort of this sort of bottoms-up startup world that we're in?
Sure. So we're in conversations with a lot of banks. The banks have a lot of interest in blockchain to various degrees, depending on how forward-leaning they are. It's a little bit of a like frenemy relationship, because the main job of banks is to create trust. They do not so much of technological work or like product work. The main thing they provide is this: we are the trusted party that can perform certain functions for you. You can rely on us. Here's a set of commitments. We're going to stick to these commitments. But that's exactly what blockchains are doing. If you think about it, like what blockchains do is automate this trust. Take certain functions from banks, governments, institutions, and put them on in mathematical programmable language. And so they understand this. It's a little bit like telecom companies before the internet, thinking about, oh, what is the internet going to mean for us? Like, is it like how we're going to be charging, how we're going to be cutting a percentage of whatever is happening on, because they used to charge per minute of the phone call, but that's not going to happen. But they still provide some useful services like infrastructure and so on. So I think banks understand that the need for trust, for trusted representatives will not go away completely, but it will be substantially diminished and substantially replaced with math, cryptography, and open source code. And so they are slow. You need a lot of patience. You need to show like respect and go through education and explain to them how things are and how they can benefit from it with their internal processes, and it's going to go through this gradual process.
And you seemingly overcome a bunch of these things. So like, what's been the unlock, you think, or I don't know what the exact state of this?
I think it's more like, you know, like some countries are more eager to embrace blockchains and some are resisting. And it does not apply to blockchains, it applies to any technology. The ones who are most forward-thinking understand that this is a wave they have to ride, otherwise it's just going to overthrow them. So the key is to like not so much like any magic bullet, the silver bullet that you can come and apply to everyone, but rather find the partners who are more receptive and who are more progressive in their thinking.
And just to drill a little bit deeper, like, do you feel like, are you interfacing with like, let's call it like the core of the bank, or is this like innovation department over on the side?
You always talk to people. Banks are a little bit like a government. They're not monolithic, like as any large organization. They consist of a small internal groups that have their own interests and agendas and missions, and they have to cooperate. So yeah, you have to find the right people who are going to be the champion of your project, and you're going to help them promote this agenda internally and convince everyone else that this is worth doing.
Yep, makes sense, makes sense. All right, so you guys obviously have taken two different approaches to scaling Ethereum. What's like the main sort of benefit of the approach that you've taken? So we can start with you, Ed.
Sure. I mean, we've taken a very pragmatic approach. We're focused on the factors, the metrics that users care most about. That is cost, response time, throughput capacity, and reliability. And we've built our technology around that, rather than starting with technology and then finding a way to apply it. I think this pragmatic approach has served us really well. And it's served our users really well. This is what has enabled us to get to market. And one of the lessons that we've learned is that I think in designing and building a system, is that people talk all the time about some parts of an L2 architecture and not as much about other parts. And one of the parts that people talk about, I think way out of proportion to its actual importance to users, is how proving works. It's critical that you have proving. I think you shouldn't be on mainnet if you don't have proving. But what users care about is that you have secure proving. And other than that, they care about all of these other metrics. So I think we've taken a very pragmatic approach, and it's worked quite well. You know, very early on, we decided very mindfully to not build the name of any particular technology into the name of our company, Offchain Labs. And when we started Arbitrum, we didn't build the name of a technological approach into the name of the technology, because it's not about that. It's not about which technology we use. It's about using the technology that best meets the needs of users.
So I would sum that up as like you're pragmatic in a sense.
Yeah,
that's like, yeah,
that's right.
Okay, yeah, great. What's your answer to what do you think is the main benefit of the CK Sync approach?
I think being pragmatic is very important, and you can approach it from this angle. Let's take what works now. We are going a slightly different way. You know, like whenever there is a new generation of technology, whatever the technology is, like, you know, steam trains versus diesel and electric, or zeppelins and then planes, and then like going from propeller planes to the jet planes, you can keep iterating on the older approach and make it more and more efficient. And like propeller planes were flying well into the, you know, like they're still flying now in some cases. But when you have a new generation, like someone has to go all in on this new technology because it's going to replace everything. You cannot just like take a propeller plane and put a jet engine on it. You have to re-architect the entire thing, all aerodynamics, the wings shape, and so on. We saw early on the potential of zero-knowledge proofs to be the most important technology that like going back to the question of trust, that automates trust at industrial scale. In fact, that's the only technology we have that can create a you know, scalability on a global scale, like going to being like the internet, where you can expand indefinitely and keep adding thousands and thousands of chains and millions of transactions. And so I think this is the key benefit of zero-knowledge proofs, or like ZK proofs, 16 zero-knowledge proofs, compared to existing approaches, the capacity of the networks that can be interoperable very, very smoothly and fully verifiable, meaning like proofs are on all the time and they cannot be cheated. No part of the network can like escape the security guardrail of the proofs. That is something that only zero-knowledge proofs can provide, and I think we will see it very soon in action when the roll-up clusters are going to be on the rise, app chains are going to be on the rise, and it's the way to make them interoperable and autonomous and sovereign is by using zero-knowledge proofs for this interoperability.
I guess I disagree with that. I don't think zero-knowledge proofs really help you very much in terms of interoperation. I don't think they really help you to scale up. The reason that jet planes replaced propeller planes mostly is that jet plane gets you to your destination much faster, right? It actually impacts the user experience of air travel in a way that the differences that Alex is talking about really don't. We will continue to use whatever proving technology best meets the needs of our users, but we don't think that today ZK makes any fundamental advantage from the standpoint of user experience, throughput, or ability to interoperate.
And what is like the key constraint you see with zero-knowledge proofs? What's the thing that's like...
Cost.
Cost? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Zero-knowledge proofs are more expensive. Today, they're actually quite expensive. But the big advantage of optimistic proving is that it always costs honest parties zero.
I fully disagree with this. And
Great.
I think this is where we have to zoom in. Let's start with costs. I agree that zero-knowledge proofs today on the ZK rollups that you see are higher than optimistic rollups. The new generation of provers and virtual machines that, like, I know that is in the making for sure by Meta Labs, it's coming out very soon, is on the same level as today's optimistic rollups. And their optimistic rollups don't have zero cost. It's not just the computational cost of a single sequencer that is running them, because the whole point of fraud proofs is to make them permissionless so that anyone can run the full node and has to run the full node and verify transactions and then intervene if something is going wrong. So you always have this factor of redundancy, which cannot be zero, it cannot be like 2 or even 10. It has to be quite significant.
But here's the thing. If you have a successful chain, you will already have thousands of nodes. And the work...
So? You can have something like Solana with, or like, a base with a central sequencer. Who's running the base full node?
I'm talking about nodes, not validators. In an optimistic chain, any node, even just an RPC node, is doing all of the work that's needed to be checking the computation.
Sure, but how many of those are there?
Many thousands already organically.
So that means that your overhead is many thousand times over like a native computation. And I can tell you that zero-knowledge proofs are closing this gap and are coming probably lower than that threshold. So like all of your nodes have to run it, whereas with zero-knowledge proofs you can run a single node or a small number of nodes to be Byzantine fault tolerant. They can be providing the RPC experience to everyone, and then the proofs guarantee that whatever you're reading is correct. You don't have to do this computational redundancy.
But it's not redundancy. Any node needs to actually keep up with the state of the chain. And there are thousands of nodes organically if your chain is operating at scale. Right?
Why do you need thousands of nodes if you have your RPC provider,
because you have millions of users and they're doing RPCs.
Well, sure, but you don't have to re-execute this code, right? You can be sharing the state of your blockchain through these nodes, so they do zero computational work. They just spread. They act as a CDN network, which is very different from a cloud network.
Well, I mean, we can go quite deep on. Quite deep on this. But let me just say that if you're talking about cost of operation for a chain, this is not the piece in any case which dominates. It's the cost of storing data, which is especially important, and as well as, right, and that is going to dominate in practice.
I agree, and this is where your knowledge proofs come to rescue. If you remember last year before AP 4844, the cost of data availability on Ethereum was quite high, and optimistic rollups were charging users like $1 and above, whereas zkSync was charging like half of that, like $1 versus 50 cents, because of the state compression that is, or like state diffs that are being put on chain, which enables super linear state compression. But like, I mean, we can talk about like
yeah.
because I think interoperability is a lot more interesting question to dive into, if you permit.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
let's go there.
Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah. So when you talk about interoperability, the challenge is to provide interoperability, cross-chain actions that are faster than L1 finality. Right. L1 finality is much too slow from a user experience standpoint. Right. And what that means is that the issue, the challenge in interoperability, and by the way, optimistic rollups provide finality for your transactions at basically the speed of L1 finality. And if you want to do interop faster than that, then the main consideration, the main challenge you have is not about proving, because the main challenge that you have is dealing with the possibility of reorgs on the L2 chain or the L1 chain. So interop protocols are all about dealing with those reorg considerations. They're not about proving, because you need to be able to do interop faster than settlement to L1. And so how you do settlement matters, I think, not much at all for having fast interop. It's all about dealing with reorg and finality times.
So how do you actually move funds between the chains in an interop, or like let's say like faster than Ethereum?
Yeah, so let me talk a little bit about what the challenge is, because this challenge is faced no matter what kind of proving you have. So suppose that some action happens on chain A, and you want some action that happens on chain B to be contingent on the chain A thing happening, right? That's kind of a common use case. And so the problem that you have from designing an interop protocol is if that action on chain A is not final, that is, if there is a history in which that happens, the risk you need to deal with is that some other history ends up eventually being published as canonical, right? Because until you've actually committed something to L1, and that something has finality on L1, then it could change. It might not be in the history. So proving that if this history, if this input happened, then some payment was made is not sufficient to know that that payment was made, right? What you need is to either have some way of achieving faster finality of that on L1, or else some other kind of protocol where you can protect parties from this reorg risk. And you need to do that. That's the core challenge in getting to fast interop. Proving doesn't really come into it, because until you know what the history was, it doesn't matter that you can prove that if some history happened, then the result is something.
Well, I think you're picking some this is going too far from the question I originally asked. So the problem you have is that interop you're talking about is about just like passing arbitrary messages. I was asking about actually bridging funds.
Yes.
Because if you pass arbitrary and being sovereign and being able to expand the capacity of your entire network of rollups indefinitely. So let's explore, let's see, let me just take a look at what you're describing. I agree that to go faster than Ethereum finality, you would need something else. You need some economic layer for greater user experience. This is equal for all rollups. We'll have something like pre-confirmations. So we don't have any difference here.
Yep.
The difference comes when you actually need to reach finality, because you need to rebalance the assets. We're in blockchains. It's all about assets. like you need to move native assets, you need to move ETH, you need to move native coins that were minted on a lot of different chains. And while optimistic rollups enable finality at the moment of commitment, this is subjective finality from the point of view of the user who runs the full node. Now, if you have 1,000 chains, and you do something, like you make a commitment on this chain, and you want to propagate this commitment down to like all the other chains, all of them would have to run the full node for the first chain and would have to trust this full node.
No, there are other ways of doing this. There are other kinds of protocols that you can use which allow you to protect users against this this kind of reorg risk. That's I mean,
explain it in TLDR. Like, I'm a chain, I'm running a chain, and then I want to receive a transaction. I'm chain B. I want to receive a transaction from chain A, which is operated by someone completely unrelated to me. I don't trust them. Right? Like, just someone runs the sequencer there, and both are optimistic. How do you transact?
Well, so we could, I mean, we could have a longer conversation about what this design space looks like, but let me give you an example, right? Cross-chain atomic swap protocols are a good example of this, right? It's a way in which you can know that this thing can happen over here if and only if that thing happens over there. And without needing to do a full settlement or full sort of chain-to-chain message that's fully
Sure,
settled.
so how do you do an atomic swap between chains without running full node?
Stop you guys and shift gears a little bit, but I really appreciate the...
I mean, we're getting in the weeds.
Yeah, you're... you know, you made it spicy. I appreciate
tuned.
that. Yeah, the indulgence.
We are in Thailand. It should be spicy.
Exactly. Yeah, perfect. To what extent do you think there's going to be like a lot of different stacks and a lot of different approaches that's also like going to stay for the long term versus like, you know, I get that like to some extent you have an incentive to say your thing is going to win, but what do you think is like, obviously it's a very like bottoms up open-ended space. Do you think there's going to be like a plural of solutions, or do you think it's going to like consolidate onto something very few?
I think there will be a plural, but I don't think there will be 10. Right? I think there will be, and in fact, you know, there are a limited number of these stacks that have any significant share now, I think, and there'll probably be some consolidation.
I agree. I fully agree with this. I think that there will be for sure not just one. There will be multiple, but like less than 10. And I think that this is great for Ethereum and great for everyone. Because now we are in incredibly exciting times. The golden age of blockchains is upon us for the next couple of years. We really have a chance to make a huge dent in the world and like transcend this small number of users, which used to be a zero-sum game and everyone was like trying to compete. What we can do now is each of these stacks in our ecosystems, like, or I call them roll-up clusters, will go after external opportunities to bring more external use cases and like new users, mainstream users, into Ethereum. And everyone is now incentivized to go into exploring blue oceans rather than go for the exact same use case, exact same industry over and over again. And just technologically, it doesn't make sense to have too many because we'll have competition on some key important metrics. But then it's still going to be like power law effect of like what makes sense there.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And but I just want to hit you with one thing that I think a lot of people don't recognize, which is that the L2 ecosystem and L3 are already incredibly successful. I sometimes get questions on, you I assume would know better than to ask this question, but I sometimes get questions about, well, when is L2 going to make a big difference? The fact is that today, more than 98% of the gas consumption in the Ethereum stack is in layer 2 and layer 3. Right? By almost any metric, essentially all of the activity is on layer 2 and layer 3 today. And what that means is that the L2 roadmap has already scaled Ethereum up by a factor of maybe 50. We have a lot more we can do. And as Alex said, it's great that there are different solutions out there, all trying to find the best way and to learn from each other.
Yeah, you weren't here this morning, but we launched just today like a new metrics page on Dune where you can actually really easily see gas volumes, all these things, and broken down by various chains and whatnot. So everybody can follow this now.
Fantastic.
But I'll do one more question, and then we can open up for questions from the audience. But obviously, one of the big critiques of Ethereum these days is all this fragmentation, all these like various things users have to deal with to do things on chain. How sort of concerned are you about this sort of being solved or not solved, or like how far away do you think it is for like a user to actually have just like a very smooth, they don't have to deal with all the low-level stuff type of experience?
I think there are two important things to say about this. One is that the user experience needs to get a lot better, right? There's a lot of friction in the UX, and that doesn't need to be the case. But what I think we don't want to do is try to make everything look the same, right? Nobody's complaining that Bangkok has restaurant fragmentation, right? Because there's so many different restaurants, and they have different kinds of food, and it's prepared by different people. Right? This is amazing, but it's amazing because it's easy to switch, because you can make your choice, and not everyone has to choose the same thing, right? If you needed to, if it was like super expensive, super difficult to like change where you eat, so you have to eat at the same place every night, that would not be good, right? So we need to make it so that people can move fluidly across these different chains, across these different ecosystems, and I think if we do that, then fragmentation turns into choice, which is what we want.
Fully agree. This is a beautiful metaphor, and I will just add to this that the thing that we will work towards, and we have commitment across all the ecosystems to work, is standardization. Like what you want is I mean, maybe a better analogy would be like different parts of Bangkok are like exciting and having their own culture and their own vibes, etc. But you can move between them, and moving between them is not zero cost. It's not like walking from
maybe not the best analogy.
I mean, like, I just experienced it firsthand. But you can still do this because you have standards, because all the roads are operated in the same way, and it's like all the same side of the
maybe
street.
That's Bangkok's problem. It's not that much standard. Like, a road doesn't go, straight from A to B.
No, they just need more throughput.
You can get there, right? Like, but imagine if you had like a part of a city which is like operated only by railways, and the other where you have cars, and the third one where you have gondolas on channels and nothing else, and they don't intersect. That would be a problem. Standards are important, and like standards of like how do we encode chain ID. This is not contentious. This is not something everyone will insist on their own standard for chain ID. It's stupid. Or standard for like cross-chain addresses, right? Like how do I specify that this 0x something is on zkSync or on Arbitrum, right? So that people don't confuse it and don't send it to the wrong address. This is a low-hanging fruit which we're already working on, and it will be done, and then wallets will embrace it. And it will be like a very standard interface for like bridging or sending funds from one chain to another or interacting. Under the hood, it may take different routes and maybe like different costs, depending on whether you're inside a rollup cluster or like between the rollup clusters, but that should be fine.
Good. All right. We'll take one question from the audience, and then we'll wrap up the day.
Fire away.
So anyone has a good and spicy question for us? No pressure. Pressure, presumably, or you just want to party.
Yeah.
I don't wish one.
Maybe the question is, where are the drinks?
Front row.
All right.
Yeah.
What are your favorite real on-chain applications?
Favorite real on-chain applications?
Real on-chain?
Yeah, like use cases, I guess.
Yeah, real use cases.
Oh, for me, it's like obviously payments first and foremost, because this is what people are using in the like not in the West, but in LATAM, Asia, everywhere, where like cross-border payments or local payments are not efficient. Even in Europe, in some cases, like you don't have something as convenient as like Venmo in the US, and like it's a lot easier to use stable coins. And then identity, like we have Quark ID, just got integrated in Buenos Aires city national identity app, and it's going to be expanded to all of Argentina soon, and hopefully to LATAM. They are doing cooperations between Mexico and Colombia and other places. Physical infrastructure with on-chain timestamping, like we have a nodal chain in the Elastic Chain network that is timestamping pictures made in real time from like devices with zero-knowledge proofs of authenticity signed by device manufacturers, so you can be sure that like you're in a war zone and this has been done in a certain moment of time and in a certain place, and it's real and it's not AI fabricated. But just a few examples here.
Sure. Let me just add that for me, there's an application area that I want to get more engaged in but haven't found the time, which is blockchain gaming. There's a tremendous amount of interesting activity going on there, and I wish I had the time to explore it.
All right, thank you so much. That big round of applause for Alex and Ed. Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.